The dog didn't bark. He froze, staring at one exact patch of ground, like something underneath was staring back. Snow crunched under Caleb's boots as he dropped to one knee, breath fogging in the cold. Koda's claws scraped the frozen dirt, slow, deliberate. Then, clang. Metal, not rock, not scrap. Something placed there, buried, waiting. Caleb's hand hovered above it, and that's when Koda suddenly stepped back. "What do you think is buried out there?" The sound came sharp and sudden, metal against metal, loud enough to snap through sleep like a rifle crack. Caleb Turner's eyes opened instantly. His body moved before his mind caught up. One hand clenched tight, the other already searching the dark. Breath held, shoulders tense. For a split second, the truck around him wasn't a truck. It was heat, dust, rotor wash, someone shouting over a radio. Contact! The memory broke just as fast as it came. Cold air filled his lungs. Colorado, not Afghanistan. A steady weight pressed against his forearm. Koda. The German shepherd didn't move much, just lifted his head and rested his muzzle against Caleb's wrist. Warm, solid, real. His ears flicked once toward the noise outside, then back to Caleb, as if checking whether the threat was still there. Caleb exhaled slowly through his nose. "Yeah," he muttered, voice rough. False alarm. Outside, a truck idled somewhere across the lot. A loose chain clanged again in the wind, softer this time, less threatening. Just metal, just wind. Koda lowered his head but didn't fully relax. He never did. Caleb shifted in the driver's seat of the old Chevy, the worn leather creaking beneath him. A sleeping bag covered his legs, bunched up from another restless night. The heater had given up weeks ago. Frost traced thin lines along the inside of the windshield. He rubbed a hand over his face, feeling the grit of bad sleep and older things that didn't wash off. 2 hours, he said quietly, glancing at the dash clock glowing faintly. Not bad. Koda's tail thumped once against the seat. Caleb almost smiled. Outside, the mountains were nothing but shadows layered against a darker sky. Somewhere beyond them, snow was already falling. Up here, it was just cold enough to remind you it could. He leaned his head back against the seat, eyes open now, staring through the windshield. No more sleep tonight. That much he knew. Didn't matter. It rarely did. The truck stoplights buzzed faintly overhead. A couple rigs rolled through, engines low and steady, people moving on to somewhere else. Somewhere warm. Somewhere that belonged to them. Caleb watched them go. Then he reached over and scratched behind Koda's ear. "Another 5-star night, huh?" Koda didn't answer, just leaned slightly into his hand. Morning came gray and slow. Sunlight pushed through a layer of clouds, turning the frost on the windshield into streaks of water. Caleb wiped a clear patch with his sleeve and looked out at the lot. A few cars, a delivery truck, the same gas station sign humming quietly. Koda was already awake, sitting upright in the passenger seat, watching. Always watching. Caleb grabbed the last of his water, took a sip, then reached down to the floorboard and pulled up an old laptop. The hinge creaked when he opened it. The screen flickered once, twice, then steadied. He balanced it on the steering wheel. Job listings first, same as yesterday, same as last week. Nothing. Veteran programs, dead ends, waiting lists. He clicked through without really reading, more out of habit than hope. The kind of routine you keep because stopping would mean admitting something you weren't ready to say out loud. Koda shifted slightly, eyes still on the world outside. Caleb paused, then opened another tab. County auctions. Most of it was junk, tax liens, burned-out trailers, empty lots nobody wanted. He scrolled slowly, fingers stiff from the cold. Then he stopped. A photo filled the screen. Stone walls, tall windows, a wide, broken porch stretching across the front of a massive house sitting alone against a backdrop of mountains. Caleb frowned. He clicked. More images loaded. The mansion again from another angle. Then the land around it. Open fields, patches of trees, nothing close for miles. Then something else. A vehicle. Old, rusted. Another, and another. Caleb leaned closer. 11 in total, scattered across the property like someone had just left them. He kept scrolling. The next image made him blink. An airplane, small, twin engine sitting in the field. The next one, another plane. "What the hell?" he murmured. The description was short. Abandoned estate, mountain region, all structures included, as-is condition. Minimum bid, far lower than anything like this should have been. Caleb sat back slightly, eyes narrowing. Something about it didn't fit. Too big, too intact, too cheap. Places like that didn't get forgotten. Not in this country. He glanced over at Koda. The dog had turned his head slightly, watching him now instead of the parking lot. Ears forward, quiet, attentive. Caleb turned the screen toward him. "You seeing this?" Koda tilted his head a fraction. Caleb let out a soft breath, something between a laugh and disbelief. "Yeah. I don't buy it either." Outside, a gust of wind rattled a loose sign somewhere near the building. The sound echoed faintly across the lot. Caleb looked back at the screen. Mansion. 11 vehicles. 2 planes. Practically being given away. His thumb hovered over the trackpad. Common sense said, walk away. Years of experience said something was wrong. But something else, quieter, harder to ignore, pushed back. Not hope, not exactly. Just a direction. He closed the laptop slowly. For a moment, he sat there, staring out through the windshield at the distant line of mountains. Then he nodded once to himself. "All right," he said under his breath. Koda's tail tapped against the seat again, a little stronger this time. Caleb glanced at him. "Don't get excited," he muttered. "Probably a bad idea." Koda just looked at him. Steady, certain. Caleb turned back to the road ahead. Bad idea or not, it was the first place he'd seen in a long time that felt like it was waiting. And somewhere deep down, a part of him he hadn't heard from in years was already moving. The road narrowed long before the signal dropped. Caleb noticed it without thinking. Asphalt turned to gravel. Gravel turned to dirt. The kind of road that didn't show up on maps unless you already knew it was there. He slowed the Chevy as the tires crunched over loose stone. Pine trees thickened on both sides, tall and close, cutting the wind into thin, whispering streams. Snow clung to the shadows between them, untouched. Koda shifted in the passenger seat. Not restless, not excited. Alert. Caleb glanced at him. "You feel it too?" Koda didn't look at him. His ears angled forward, nose lifting slightly toward the windshield, catching something Caleb couldn't. Caleb tightened his grip on the wheel just a fraction. The road curved once, then again, climbing higher. The air grew thinner, colder. No houses, no fences, no signs of life. Then the trees opened. Caleb eased off the gas. The gate stood ahead, iron, tall, and leaning slightly to one side. Rust had eaten into the bars, leaving rough patches that caught the pale afternoon light. One hinge sagged just enough to make the whole thing look like it might give way if pushed too hard. A weathered sign hung crooked near the top. Most of the paint was gone. Only a faint outline of letters remained. Caleb didn't try to read it. Didn't matter. He already knew this was the place. He put the truck in park and stepped out. Cold air hit him immediately, sharp and clean, carrying the scent of pine and something older, something that had been sitting still for too long. Silence settled around him. Not the quiet of a peaceful place, the kind of quiet that feels paused. Caleb reached out and pushed the gate. It resisted at first, then gave with a long, scraping groan that echoed into the trees. The sound lingered longer than it should have, bouncing back in a way that made the space feel larger than it looked. He paused, listened. Nothing answered. He climbed back into the truck and drove through. The path beyond stretched farther than expected. Weeds pushed up through the dirt, frozen in place. Small saplings had started growing along the edges, thin and stubborn. Nature reclaiming ground that nobody had bothered to fight for. Caleb kept his speed low, scanning left, right, tree line, ground, movement, shadow, old habits, always. Then the trees broke again, and Caleb stopped. The mansion rose out of the land like it had been placed there and forgotten. Stone walls, dark and weathered, tall windows, some cracked, some missing entirely. A wide front porch sagging slightly on one side. The roofline stretched across the property, uneven but still holding. Time had touched it, but not finished the job. Caleb let out a slow breath. Well, he muttered, that's not normal. Koda was already standing, front paws pressed lightly against the passenger door, eyes fixed ahead. But not on the house. Caleb followed his gaze. The field stretched wide around the mansion, scattered with shapes that didn't belong. Vehicles. Lots of them. An old pickup leaned into the ground as if it had tried to sink away. A rusted SUV sat near the edge of a collapsed shed. A military-style Jeep rested near a fence line that barely existed anymore. Caleb counted without meaning to. 1, 3, 6, 11. All left where they had stopped. None stripped, none salvaged. Just abandoned. That doesn't make sense, he said quietly. Koda didn't react. His focus hadn't changed. Caleb's eyes moved past the vehicles, toward the far side of the field. The planes came into view last. 2 of them. Twin engine, sitting low in the grass beyond the mansion. Their wings stretched out wide, dusted with snow. One tilted slightly, as if the ground beneath it had shifted over time. The other sat more upright, its frame still intact. They looked quiet. Not wrecked, not destroyed, just left behind. Caleb felt something tighten in his chest. Not fear, recognition. Places like this didn't just happen. They were made. Then something changed. A subtle shift. Koda stepped down from the door, not toward the house, not toward the vehicles. He moved in the opposite direction. Caleb watched him go. The dog walked slowly across the frozen ground, stopping about 20 yards away from the main structure. His head lowered slightly, nose working the air, then the ground. Then he stopped. Completely still, tail level, ears forward. Caleb stepped out of the truck. Koda. No response. The dog didn't look back, didn't move. Caleb approached slowly, measured steps. watching the ground, the surroundings, the line of trees beyond the field. Nothing moved, no wind, no birds, nothing. When he reached Koda's side, he followed the dog's gaze. A stretch of land. Flat. Unremarkable. Just dirt and patches of dead grass breaking through thin snow. Caleb crouched slightly, eyes narrowing. What is it? Koda didn't answer. He shifted once, placing his paw lightly against the ground, then lifting it again. Not digging, not scratching. Testing, listening. Caleb felt it then. Not something he could see, something he recognized. The same quiet tension that settles before something happens. He scanned the horizon again. Tree line, sky, house, vehicles, planes. Nothing. Still nothing. But Koda hadn't moved. Caleb straightened slowly. All right, he murmured. He looked back toward the mansion, then down at the ground again. Yeah, we're not done here. Koda finally turned his head, meeting his eyes for a brief second. Then he looked back at the same spot. Like he already knew. Caleb didn't push it. Not yet. Whatever had Koda locked in like that, it wasn't going anywhere. Later, he said quietly, more to himself than the dog. Koda didn't argue. He held the stare a few seconds longer, then turned and followed as Caleb headed toward the mansion. The front steps creaked under his weight. Old wood. Dry. Holding on, but just barely. The door stood slightly open. That stopped him. Caleb froze just short of the threshold. His eyes moved first. Frame, hinges, handle, the gap between door and wall. No fresh scratches, no broken latch, no sign of forced entry. Just open. He angled his body slightly, keeping one shoulder turned, giving himself space to move if needed. Koda. The dog stepped forward, nose low, moving past Caleb without hesitation. He paused at the doorway, sniffed once, then stepped inside. No tension spike, no warning. Caleb followed. The air inside was colder than outside, but not by much. Dry. Still. Dust hung in the light pouring through the broken windows. A wide foyer opened up in front of him. Stone floors, a staircase rising to the second level, hallways stretching left and right. Furniture sat where it had been left, covered in thin layers of dust, but not buried, not abandoned long enough to rot. Caleb didn't move right away. He listened. Nothing. No wind inside. No animals. No movement. Just the faint creak of the house settling somewhere deep in its frame. He stepped forward. Slow. Measured. His eyes moved constantly. Corners first. Always corners. Then doorways. Then windows. Then anything that didn't belong. Old habits didn't fade. They just waited. Room by room, he moved through the house. Kitchen. Plates still stacked in a cabinet. A pan left on the stove. Living room. Couch facing a cold fireplace. A blanket folded neatly over one arm. Not thrown. Folded. Caleb paused there. Something about that bothered him more than anything else so far. People who ran didn't fold blankets. He moved on. A study near the back of the house caught his attention. Maps covered one wall. Topographic. Mountain ranges, valleys, flight paths marked in faded ink. Caleb stepped closer. His eyes traced one of the lines automatically. Altitude change. Wind direction. Landing zone marked with a small XOL zone. He didn't realize he'd said it out loud, until his own voice echoed faintly in the room. Koda stood in the doorway behind him, watching. Caleb exhaled slowly and stepped back. "Yeah," he muttered. "I see it." He turned away. Another room, smaller. A radio sat on a table near the window. Old, military style. The kind that shouldn't be here. Caleb approached it without thinking. His fingers hovered just above the dial. Then he turned it. A burst of static filled the room. Sharp. Sudden. Too loud. His chest tightened instantly. The room disappeared. Heat. Dust. A voice breaking through interference. "Repeat. We've got gunfire somewhere too close." Caleb jerked back. His hand slammed against the table, knocking the radio sideways. The static cut out. Silence rushed back in. Cold. Real. Colorado. Not there. Not anymore. Something pressed against his leg, Koda. The dog had moved in without a sound. His body leaned just enough to make contact. Grounding. Present. Caleb stood still. Breathing. One breath in. One out. Another. His hands slowly unclenched. "Easy," he whispered, more to himself than the dog. Koda stayed where he was. Didn't move. Didn't look away. Caleb reached down, resting a hand briefly on the dog's head. "Good." The word came out quieter than he expected. After a moment, he stepped away from the radio. Didn't touch it again. Upstairs came next. The stairs creaked with every step, each sound echoing louder than it should have. Bedrooms lined the hallway. One door stood open. Inside, a bed sat neatly made. Clothes hung in the closet. A suitcase rested half-packed on a chair. Caleb stopped in the doorway. Half-packed, not finished, not abandoned over time. Interrupted. His eyes moved to the nightstand. A photograph. He stepped closer. A man stood beside a small aircraft, smiling into the camera. Behind him, the same mountains stretched into the distance. Younger, stronger. Alive in a way the house no longer felt. Caleb picked it up carefully. Dust smeared under his thumb. He turned it over. No writing. No name. Just a life that had been here. Then, wasn't. Koda shifted behind him. Not restless. Just aware. Caleb set the photo back exactly where it had been. He walked to the window. From here, the entire property spread out below. The vehicles, the planes, the open land, and beyond it, the spot. That same patch of ground Koda had refused to leave alone. Caleb stared at it for a long moment. The wind moved across the field now, just enough to stir the grass. Nothing else moved. Nothing obvious. But the feeling was still there. Unfinished. He turned away. "Yeah," he said quietly. "We'll come back to that." Behind him, Koda didn't take his eyes off the hill. Not once. The light faded slowly over the valley. By the time Caleb stepped back outside, the sky had turned a dull gray-blue, the kind that swallowed detail and flattened distance. The mountains blurred into shadow, and the mansion behind him creaked as the temperature dropped. Koda moved ahead of him this time, not wandering, not exploring, straight toward the same spot. Caleb watched him go, slower now, paying attention to the rhythm of the dog's movement. No hesitation, no distraction, just a direct line. "That's twice," Caleb muttered. Koda stopped at the exact same patch of ground. no more than a few feet across. Nothing marked it. No rocks, no debris, no difference in color or shape. Just ground. The dog lowered his head, not sniffing wildly like he would with a scent trail. Measured, controlled. Then he placed one paw down and dragged lightly across the surface. A faint scrape. He stopped. Listened. Caleb felt it again. That same tension from earlier. Not fear. Awareness. He stepped closer. What are you picking up? Koda didn't look at him. He circled once, slow, tight, then returned to the same position. His ears flicked forward, then back, adjusting to something Caleb couldn't hear. Wind passed through the trees behind them, soft and distant. But here, nothing. Too still. Caleb crouched. He pressed his gloved hand against the ground. Cold. Hard. Frozen dirt and stone beneath a thin layer of snow. Normal. He knocked lightly with his knuckles. Dull. No echo. He tried again, a little harder. Same result. Nothing there, he said, but he didn't sound convinced. Koda shifted again. Then, for the first time, he looked directly at Caleb. Not confused, not uncertain. Waiting. Caleb held the gaze for a second, then exhaled slowly and stood. All right, he said under his breath. You've got my attention. Darkness came fast in the mountains. By the time they returned to the house, the valley had already disappeared into shadow. The plains were barely outlines now. The vehicles, just shapes. Inside, the cold settled in deeper. Caleb lit a lantern and set it on a table in the main room. The glow pushed back the dark just enough to make the walls visible, but not enough to reach the corners. Koda didn't lie down. He moved to the back of the house, the same direction as the hill, and stayed there, watching. Caleb unpacked what little he had. Sleeping bag, a couple cans of food, flashlight, knife. Old habits arranged everything within reach, within line of sight. He kept the lantern low. No reason to light himself up like a signal. He ate in silence. Metal spoon against the can echoed louder than it should have. Every small sound carried. Every creak from the house registered somewhere in the back of his mind. Wind pressed against the walls. A loose board shifted. A window frame rattled once, then settled. Normal. Old house sounds. But sleep didn't come easy. It never did. Caleb lay on his back, eyes open, watching the ceiling above him. Shadows moved with the lantern flame, stretching and shrinking across the beams. Time passed. He didn't check the clock. Didn't need to. Then a sound. Soft. Outside. Not wind, not the house. Something else. Caleb's eyes snapped to the doorway. Stillness. He listened. Nothing. His body stayed ready anyway. Across the room, Koda had already risen. No sudden movement. Just standing. Facing the back of the house. Facing the hill. A low rumble built in his chest. Not loud, not aggressive. A warning. Caleb sat up slowly. What is it? Koda didn't move. Didn't bark, just held position. Listening. Caleb stood, moving without sound, and crossed the room to the broken rear window. He stayed low, just beneath the frame, and angled himself enough to see outside without exposing too much. The valley stretched out in darkness. Moonlight cut through the clouds just enough to outline the land. The hill sat in the distance. Quiet. Empty. Nothing moved. No headlights, no figures, no animals. But the feeling stayed. That same pressure in the air. Like something had just been there, or was still there, just out of sight. Koda's growl faded slowly. He stepped back from the window but didn't lie down, didn't relax. Caleb remained where he was a moment longer. Watching. Counting breaths, letting the silence settle. Then he stepped away. Probably nothing, he said. But the words didn't carry much weight. He returned to his sleeping bag. Koda moved back to his position near the rear of the house, facing the hill. Always the hill. Caleb closed his eyes. Minutes passed. Then the memory came. Not triggered by sound this time. Just there. A dark room. A radio crackling. A man shouting coordinates. Then silence. The wrong kind. Caleb's eyes opened again. He stared at the ceiling. Didn't move. Didn't speak. Across the room, Koda shifted once, as if he could feel it. Caleb let out a slow breath. "Yeah," he whispered into the dark. "I know." Outside, the hill waited still, unchanged, but no longer ignored. Morning came sharp and bright. Sunlight cut across the valley, turning frost into a thin shimmer over the ground. From the porch, the land looked almost peaceful again, like the night hadn't happened. But Caleb noticed the difference. The silence didn't feel empty anymore. It felt watched. Koda stood beside him, already alert, already facing the hill. Caleb followed his gaze for a moment, then turned away. "Later," he said. This time, his voice carried more weight. They needed information. The drive into town took longer than expected. Not because of distance, but because Caleb drove slower now. Eyes scanning the road, checking mirrors, watching for anything that didn't belong. Old habits. Reactivated. Koda sat upright beside him, tracking the tree line as they passed. Every turn, every clearing, every stretch of open road, his head moved slightly, processing. Neither of them spoke. They didn't need to. The town appeared gradually. A few buildings, a gas station, a diner with a faded sign, a hardware store that looked older than everything around it. Caleb parked along the street. Engines were off, doors closed. But as soon as he stepped out, he felt it. Eyes. Not obvious, not direct. Just there. People noticed. Koda jumped down beside him, staying close to his leg. Caleb didn't look around immediately. He let the moment settle, let the attention fade into background noise. Then he walked into the diner. The bell above the door rang once. Conversation dipped, not stopped, just dipped. Koda moved at his side, calm, controlled. A few heads turned toward the dog, softer expressions replacing suspicion. Dogs had that effect. Caleb took a seat near the window. A waitress approached. Mid-50s, tired eyes, kind enough but careful. "What can I get you?" "Coffee," Caleb said. She nodded, then glanced briefly at Koda. "He friendly?" "Yeah." That seemed to ease something. She poured the coffee and set it down. "You passing through?" she asked. Caleb lifted the cup, letting the heat settle into his hands. "Just bought a place up the mountain." That did it. Not loud, not dramatic. But the room shifted. The waitress paused just a second too long. "What place?" she asked. Caleb took a sip. The old stone house, out past the ridge. Silence. Not total, but enough. A man at the counter stopped stirring his drink. Someone near the back shifted in their seat. The waitress set the coffee pot down slowly. "You mean that place?" she said. Caleb met her eyes. "Yeah." She didn't respond right away. Instead, she wiped her hands on her apron, buying time. Then she leaned in slightly. "You might want to rethink that." Caleb didn't react. "Why?" She hesitated, then shook her head. "Just not a place people stay long." "Why?" he asked again. This time she didn't answer. Instead, she stepped back. "I'll bring you something to eat," she said, already turning away. Conversation didn't pick back up the same way. It stayed low. Careful. Caleb didn't push it. Not yet. He finished the coffee, listening instead of asking, picking up fragments, pauses, the way certain words never got said out loud. Then, a voice from behind him. "You're talking about the Bennett place." Caleb turned. An older man sat alone in the booth behind him, weathered face, hands rough from years of work. Not looking at Caleb, just speaking. "That land's been empty a long time," the man continued. "Longer than it should be." Caleb shifted slightly in his seat. "Why?" The man took a slow sip from his mug. People stopped asking that. Caleb waited. Silence stretched. Then the man set his cup down. "Best advice," he said. "Leave it the way you found it." Caleb leaned back slightly. "That's not really my style." The man finally looked at him. Really looked. Then his eyes dropped to Koda. Something changed. Recognition. Not of the dog, of what the dog was. "He yours?" the man asked. "Yeah." The man nodded slowly. "Then you better listen to him." Caleb didn't respond. The man stood, leaving cash on the table, and walked out without another word. The bell rang again. Then he was gone. Caleb sat there a moment longer. Koda shifted beside him, calm but attentive. Caleb reached down, resting a hand briefly on his shoulder. "Yeah," he murmured. "I heard him." Outside, the town carried on like nothing had happened. But as Caleb stepped back into the street, one thing was clear. Everyone knew the place. Everyone had a reason not to talk about it. And whatever that reason was, it hadn't stayed buried. Not completely. Koda looked up at him once, then back toward the mountains. The same direction, always the same. Caleb followed his gaze. "Yeah," he said quietly. "We're going back." The road felt different on the return. Same turns, same trees, same empty stretches of mountain silence. But Caleb drove slower now, watching. Not for what was there, for what didn't belong. Koda stayed upright the entire time, nose occasionally lifting toward the cracked window, catching the air in short, controlled breaths. His ears twitched at things Caleb couldn't hear. Neither of them relaxed. When the gate came into view again, Caleb didn't drive straight through. He stopped. Engine idling, eyes scanning. Tree line first, left ridge, right slope, no movement, no tracks crossing the road, no vehicles. Still, too still. He killed the engine. Silence dropped in hard. Caleb waited. 10 seconds, 20, a full minute. Nothing shifted. Only then did he push the door open and step out. "All right," he muttered. "Let's check it." Koda was already moving. Straight past the mansion, past the vehicles, Past everything. Back to the same patch of ground. No hesitation, no doubt. Caleb grabbed the shovel from the truck bed. Old, worn, good enough. He walked over, boots crunching lightly over frost. Koda stepped aside just enough to give him space, but didn't leave. Didn't break eye contact with the ground. Caleb drove the shovel down. The blade cut through the top layer of dirt with a dull crunch. Frozen. Compact. He leaned into it, using his weight. Another push. The soil gave slightly. He lifted the first load and tossed it aside. Nothing. Just dirt. He kept going. Second scoop. Third. The rhythm came naturally. Dig, lift, toss. Dig, lift, toss. His breathing stayed steady, controlled. The same pace he'd used clearing debris in places far worse than this. Koda circled once, stopped, watched, always watching. 5 minutes passed, then 10. The hole deepened slowly, the ground growing denser with each layer. Caleb paused briefly, leaning on the shovel. "Still think something's here?" he asked. Koda didn't move, didn't blink. Caleb exhaled through his nose. "Yeah, me too." He drove the shovel down again. Harder this time. The blade struck something. A sharp sound cracked through the air. Metal. Caleb froze. The echo rang once, then died. He didn't move right away, just listened. Nothing answered. Slowly, he crouched, brushed away loose dirt with his gloved hands. A surface emerged. Flat. Smooth. Not rock. Not debris. Engineered. Caleb cleared more dirt. The shape widened. Edges appeared. Straight. Too straight to be natural. His jaw tightened slightly. "Well," he muttered, "that's new." Koda stepped closer now. Not excited. Focused. Caleb worked faster, pushing soil away from the edges, revealing more of the structure beneath. A rectangle. Large. Solid. Buried. He sat back on his heels for a second, taking it in. This wasn't accidental. Someone had put this here. On purpose. He brushed along one corner. His glove hit something recessed. He cleared it. A handle. Steel. Folded flat into the surface. Caleb stared at it, then looked up at Koda. "You found it." Koda's ears flicked once. No celebration, no movement, just confirmation. Caleb gripped the handle, tested it. Nothing. Locked, or just sealed shut from years of pressure. He stood, grabbed the pry bar from the truck, and came back. Positioned it carefully. Applied pressure. The metal groaned faintly. Resisted. Caleb adjusted his angle. More leverage. More force. Another groan. Something shifted. Just enough. A thin line opened along the edge. Cold air slipped through. Different from the outside air. Stale. Still. Like it hadn't moved in a long time. Caleb stopped. His instincts kicked in hard. Unknown space, unknown structure, unknown history. He stepped back, breathed once, then again. "Not today," he said quietly. Koda looked up at him. Caleb nodded toward the opening. "We don't rush this." The dog held his gaze for a moment, then sat, waiting. Caleb lowered the hatch back into place carefully. The metal settled with a dull, heavy sound. The ground looked almost untouched again. Almost. He covered it lightly with dirt, not hiding it, just marking it in his mind. Precise. He'd find it again. No problem. Standing there, Caleb looked out across the property. The mansion, the vehicles, the planes. Then back to the hill. Now it wasn't just a feeling. It was real. Something had been hidden here, and Koda had found it. Caleb rested the shovel against his shoulder. Yeah, he murmured. We're not leaving. Behind him, the wind moved through the trees again. Soft. Low. But this time, it didn't feel empty. The air carried something now. Not a sound. Not a smell. Just awareness. Caleb felt it the moment he stepped back from the hill. Like the space around him had shifted. He didn't turn his back right away. Instead, he stayed where he was, eyes moving slowly across the tree line beyond the field. Left. Right. Up along the ridge. Nothing. No movement. No flash of light. No broken line in the shadows. Still. Koda stood beside him, posture tight. Not aggressive, ready. Caleb nodded once. Yeah, he murmured. Same page. They moved back toward the house together. Not rushed. Not careless. Caleb adjusted his path slightly, angling wider across the field instead of taking the same direct line. He checked the ground as he walked. Tracks. His own from earlier. Koda's. Nothing else. No fresh impressions. No drag marks. No signs anyone had been close. But the feeling didn't go away. Inside, the house felt different too. The same rooms. The same silence. But now it had context, not abandoned, stored, like everything inside had been left behind on purpose. Caleb shut the door behind him and moved straight to the back window. Same angle, same line of sight to the hill. He stayed there for a moment, just watching. Nothing moved. Still nothing. But now he knew what was out there. And more importantly, what might be underneath. He turned away and moved quickly through the house. Bag. Flashlight. Extra batteries. Gloves. Rope. He laid everything out on the table, checked each item. Once. Then again. No wasted motion. Koda watched from the doorway. Quiet. Caleb picked up the flashlight, flicked it on. Bright beam. Steady. He nodded. All right. Koda stood. The dog moved to the back door before Caleb even gave the signal. Caleb grabbed the pry bar again and stepped outside. The light was fading fast now. Shadows stretched long across the ground, temperature dropping with it. The hill waited, exactly where they left it. Caleb walked straight to the spot. Koda took position beside him, watching. Caleb cleared the loose dirt again. The outline of the hatch appeared faster this time. He brushed the edges clean, exposed the handle, then he paused. One breath, two. He pulled. The hatch groaned open wider this time. The seal broke. A rush of cold, stale air pushed upward, brushing against his face. Different, old. He leaned back slightly. Listened. Nothing. No echo. No movement. Just depth. He angled the flashlight down. The beam cut into darkness. Concrete walls. A ladder. Metal. Industrial. Not makeshift. Not crude. Built. And built to last. Caleb crouched at the edge. The light didn't reach the bottom. Too deep. He adjusted his grip on the flashlight. "Looks like a way down," he said quietly. Koda stepped closer. He lowered his head toward the opening, sniffed once, then pulled back. Not afraid, just aware. Caleb watched him. Bad? Koda didn't react. Didn't back away. Didn't growl. He simply stepped to the side and sat, waiting. Caleb nodded. "Yeah, thought so." He reached for the rope, secured one end to the base of a nearby rock outcrop, tested it. Solid. He clipped the flashlight to his vest, leaving one hand free. Then he placed his boot on the first rung. Paused. His body went still for a second. A memory flickered. Night. Another ladder. Another drop. Someone below saying clear. Then silence. Caleb blinked, pushed it aside. Focused. "Stay," he said quietly. Koda didn't move. Didn't even blink. Caleb started down. One step, then another. The metal ladder creaked under his weight. The light above faded quickly. Cold wrapped around him as he descended. 10 feet, 15, 20. His boots hit concrete. The sound echoed softly. Caleb stepped off the ladder and turned slowly, sweeping the beam across the space. The room opened wider than expected. Not a bunker, not a shelter, something else. Shelving units lined the walls. Metal, organized. Boxes stacked with precision. A table sat near the center. Equipment scattered across it. Old radios, maps, documents. Everything coated in a thin layer of dust, but intact, preserved. Caleb moved forward slowly. Every step deliberate. Every sound measured. The air felt still, untouched, like no one had been here in years. His light passed over a map pinned to the wall. Mountain ranges. Marked paths. Coordinates scribbled in faded ink. Flight lines. LZ points. He exhaled quietly. This wasn't storage. Behind him, Koda let out a low, short bark from above. Sharp. Alert. Caleb froze. His head snapped toward the ladder. Silence. Then nothing. No footsteps, no voices, just the wind far above. But the signal had been clear. Koda didn't bark without reason. Caleb stepped back toward the ladder. Faster now. Controlled, but faster. He grabbed the rungs and climbed, one hand over the other. Up, up. The light returned gradually. Then the surface. He pulled himself out and turned immediately. Koda stood rigid, facing the tree line. Not the hill, not the house. The trees. Caleb followed his gaze. Dark shapes between trunks. Still. Unmoving. Too far to make out clearly. Too still to be nothing. His grip tightened slightly on the pry bar. "Yeah," he whispered. "We're not alone." The shapes didn't move. They stayed where they were, just inside the tree line, where shadow swallowed detail, too far to see clearly, too still to dismiss. Caleb didn't step forward, didn't call out. He shifted slightly instead, angling his body so he wasn't standing fully exposed on the open slope. One step back, then another. Slow, controlled. Koda matched him without a sound. The dog's ears stayed locked forward, every muscle tight but restrained, waiting for a signal. Caleb kept his eyes on the trees. Seconds passed, then a minute. Nothing moved. No footsteps, no breaking branches, no flash of light, just shadow. Then a shift, subtle. One of the shapes leaned, then disappeared behind a trunk. Gone. The others followed, not running, not rushing, just withdrawing. Caleb's jaw tightened. They hadn't stumbled onto this place. They knew it, and now they knew he did too. He exhaled slowly. "All right," he said under his breath. "Game on." Koda's tail didn't move. He stayed locked on the last position until the trees settled back into stillness. Only then did he glance up at Caleb. The message was clear. Not over. Caleb nodded once. "We don't chase." The decision came easy. Too many unknowns, too much open ground. He stepped forward instead, toward the hatch. Koda followed. No hesitation. Caleb crouched and pulled it open again. This time faster. More certain. No pause. He dropped the rope back into place and descended. The underground space greeted him the same way. Cold, still, untouched. But it didn't feel empty anymore. Not after what he'd seen. Not after knowing someone else had been watching it. He moved deeper into the room. Flashlight beams sweeping left to right. Shelves, boxes, tables, everything arranged with intention. No chaos, no neglect. Preserved. He stepped up to the nearest shelf and brushed dust from the top of a box. Paper, old files. He opened it. Documents, stacked neatly. Typed, dated .flight logs, coordinates, weather conditions. He flipped through a few pages quickly. Mountain passes, emergency routes, landing zones marked in pencil. His eyes narrowed. "Search and rescue," he murmured. "Not military, not exactly, but organized, professional." Another box, more of the same. Maps pinned to boards, notes in the margins. Times. Names. Caleb moved further in. The deeper he went, the clearer the pattern became. This wasn't storage. This was an operation. Someone had run something out of here. Something big. Koda barked once above. Short. Sharp. Caleb froze. Listened. Nothing followed. No footsteps. No voices. Just silence pressing down again. He didn't waste time. He moved faster now. Scanning. Absorbing. A metal cabinet stood against the far wall. Different from the others. Locked. He tried the handle. Didn't budge. He wedged the pry bar into the edge. Applied pressure. The lock snapped with a sharp crack. He pulled it open. Inside, photographs. Dozens of them, stacked, organized. He grabbed the top one. A man stood beside a plane. Same plane outside. Same mountains behind him. Different time. Younger.alive. Caleb flipped it over. A name written in faded ink. Thomas Bennett. He stared at it for a second, then reached for the next. Another photo. Different people. Rescue teams. Helicopters. Snowstorms. Families wrapped in blankets. Survivors. He flipped through them faster. Each one told the same story. Not wealth. Not secrets for profit. Something else. Something human. He exhaled slowly. "That's what you were hiding," he said. "Not money. Not gold. A record. A history. Proof of something that mattered." Koda barked again. Louder this time. Caleb didn't hesitate. He grabbed a handful of documents, shoved them into his bag, and moved for the ladder. Up fast, hand over hand. The light above grew brighter. Then he was out. Koda stood beside the hatch, facing the trees again. Same direction, same focus. Caleb stepped out and closed the hatch behind him. No hesitation this time, no second look. He covered it lightly, then turned. "Inside," he said. Koda moved immediately. No argument. They crossed the field together. Faster now. Not running, but not slow either. The house swallowed them as soon as they stepped through the door. Caleb locked it, then moved to the window, watching. The tree line stood quiet again. Nothing moved. Nothing showed. But the feeling stayed. He wasn't alone out here. Not anymore. Behind him, Koda finally lay down. Not relaxed. Just ready. Caleb set the documents on the table. His eyes moved between them and the hill outside. Whatever had been buried there wasn't meant to be found. And someone had just realized it was. Caleb didn't sleep that night. He stayed near the window, the lantern turned low, letting his eyes adjust to the dark instead of fighting it. Outside, the valley stretched quiet beneath a thin layer of moonlight. Too quiet. The kind of quiet that pressed in. Koda lay near the back door, head up, not fully resting. Every so often, one ear would twitch toward the hill, then toward the trees. Tracking. Waiting. Caleb spread the documents across the table. Flight logs, coordinates, names, not random, not scattered, structured. He picked up one page, date, weather, location, then a note, handwritten, delayed extraction, snowdrift, 2 survivors found. Caleb exhaled slowly. Search and rescue, he muttered again. But something about it still didn't sit right. The scale, the precision. This wasn't a hobby. This was something bigger. Koda shifted. A soft sound near the door. Caleb's head lifted immediately. He didn't move fast, didn't rush. He just stood, silent, and stepped toward the window again. Listened. Nothing. But the feeling stayed. Morning came without answers. Gray light filled the house slowly, pushing the shadows back into corners. Caleb stepped outside. Cold air hit sharp again. He scanned the property automatically. Truck, clear. Vehicles, unchanged. Planes, still. Then his eyes moved to the hill. No disturbance, no tracks visible from this distance. But he knew better now. Koda stepped out beside him. Paused, looked at the hill, then turned his head toward the driveway. Caleb followed the movement. A sound reached them. Low. Engine. Far off. He didn't speak. Didn't move. Just watched. A black SUV came into view at the far end of the path. Clean. Out of place. Moving slow. Intentional. Caleb's posture shifted slightly. Weight balanced. Eyes tracking. Koda stood still. No bark, just alert. The SUV rolled to a stop a few yards from the house. Engine idling. The door opened. A man stepped out. Mid-50s. Clean coat, polished boots. Not built for this terrain, but standing like he owned it anyway. He looked around once, took in the house, the vehicles, the planes. Then his gaze drifted to the hill. Just for a second. But Caleb saw it, clear as anything. The man smiled and approached. "Mr. Turner," he said. Not a question. Caleb didn't step forward. "Depends who's asking." The man extended a hand. "Grant Holloway." Caleb didn't take it. Grant lowered his hand smoothly, unfazed. "I represent a development group with interests in this region," he continued, "and I understand you've recently acquired this property." Caleb said nothing. Silence stretched. Grant didn't seem bothered. Instead, he turned slightly, looking back toward the land again. "It's quite a place," he said. "A lot of history here." His eyes flicked, again, to the hill, then back to Caleb. "I'd like to make you an offer." There it was. Direct, clean. Caleb leaned slightly against the porch post. Not interested. Grant smiled again. Polite. Practiced. "You haven't heard the number." "I don't need to." Grant studied him for a second longer, then nodded slowly. "Most people in your position would at least be curious." Caleb didn't respond. Koda stepped forward slightly. Not aggressive, just closer. Grant's eyes dropped briefly to the dog. Something changed. Recognition. Understanding. He looked back at Caleb. "Loyal dog," he said. Caleb didn't answer. Grant adjusted his coat. "Think about it," he continued. "This land, it attracts attention. Not all of it friendly." Caleb's gaze hardened slightly. "Sounds like a warning." Grant smiled faintly. "Just advice." Another pause. Wind moved across the field behind them. The planes creaked softly in the distance. Grant stepped back toward his vehicle. "If you change your mind," he said, "I'll be easy to find." He opened the door, then stopped, turned back one last time. His eyes went straight to the hill, not even trying to hide it now. Then he got in. The SUV rolled away slowly. No rush, no hesitation, gone as quietly as it arrived. Caleb stood still long after it disappeared. Koda didn't move either, both of them watching the empty road. Then Caleb exhaled. "Yeah," he said quietly. "They know." Koda's tail didn't move. His focus shifted back to the hill. Always the hill. Caleb followed his gaze. The ground looked the same, untouched. But now it felt different. Not hidden, not anymore. Now, it was something people were willing to come for. And next time, they wouldn't ask first. Caleb didn't wait for it. He moved before the next move came. By sunset, the property had changed. Not visibly, but in the details, the kind you only noticed if you were trained to look. 2 small trail cameras, one aimed at the driveway, the other angled toward the hill. Not obvious. Tucked into branches, broken lines of sight, where only someone scanning for patterns might catch them. Caleb tested each angle twice. Then it a third time. Koda stayed close the entire time, shadowing him step for step. Not wandering anymore, not curious, focused. They both were. Night came faster than usual. Cloud cover rolled in low, swallowing what little light the moon might have offered. By the time darkness settled, the valley had disappeared entirely. No stars, no horizon, just black. Inside, Caleb kept the lights low again. Minimal, controlled. He sat near the back window, not looking directly out, but watching the reflection, letting movement show itself before he had to find it. Koda lay beside the door. Head up, ears forward. Waiting. Time stretched. Minutes passed. Then hours. Nothing moved. Nothing happened. But Caleb didn't relax. He knew better. The kind of people who came during the day came back at night. It started with Koda. No sound, no bark, just a shift. His head lifted slightly higher. His body went still. Caleb noticed instantly. He didn't speak, didn't move, just listened. At first, nothing. Then a faint crunch. Far. Then another. Closer. Footsteps. Not one. Multiple. Caleb's pulse slowed instead of rising. Focus tightened. He reached slowly for the flashlight, then stopped. No light. Not yet. He moved to the side of the window, staying out of direct view. Outside, shadows. Moving. 3 of them. Low. Careful. They weren't wandering. They were heading somewhere. Caleb tracked their movement. Across the field. Straight line. No hesitation. Toward the hill. They know, he whispered. Koda stood. No growl this time, just readiness. Caleb moved for the door. Quiet. Controlled. He stepped outside into the cold. The darkness wrapped around him instantly. He didn't use the flashlight. Didn't need to. His eyes adjusted fast. The figures moved ahead, silhouettes against slightly lighter ground. One carried something long. Tool. Not a weapon. At least not obviously. They reached the hill. Stopped. One knelt. Started brushing at the ground. Caleb's jaw tightened. They knew exactly where to go. No searching, no guessing. Straight to it. He shifted position, keeping distance. Not engaging. Not yet. 3 targets. Unknown intent. Unknown equipment. Not worth the risk. Koda stayed beside him. Still. Then everything changed. One of the men stood up suddenly, turned. His head moved in Caleb's direction. Too sharp, too precise. Contact. Caleb froze. Didn't move. Didn't breathe. A second passed. Then the man looked away, back to the ground. Caleb exhaled silently. Too close. He shifted slightly, and that was enough. A small crunch under his boot. Too loud in the silence. One of the figures snapped his head up. Hey, the word cut through the night. Koda moved before Caleb could stop him. Fast. Explosive. A blur of muscle and instinct. He sprinted straight toward the hill. Between them. Between the men and the hatch. A bark tore through the silence. Deep, powerful, unmistakable. The men stumbled back. One dropped his tool. What the? Chaos broke loose. Caleb moved forward now, no longer hidden. Back off, he shouted. One of the men turned toward him. Something in his hand. Not a tool. Caleb saw it too late. A flash. A crack. The sound echoed across the valley. Everything stopped. For 1 second, nothing moved. Then Koda collapsed. The sound he made wasn't loud. Just a sharp, short yelp. Enough. Caleb was already moving. He didn't think. Didn't process. Training took over. He reached Koda in seconds, dropping to one knee, hands already checking, scanning, finding. Blood. Shoulder, not center mass. Through. Stay with me, he muttered. The men ran, boots pounding across the ground, gone into the dark. Caleb didn't chase, didn't look up. Nothing else mattered. Koda's breathing was fast, shallow, eyes locked on Caleb. Still there, still fighting. Caleb pressed his hand against the wound. Easy, easy. His voice stayed low, controlled, even as his hands moved faster. Bandage. Pressure. Stabilize. The world narrowed. No hill, no men, no house. Just Koda. Minutes passed, or seconds. Hard to tell. Then the bleeding slowed, not stopped, but controlled. Koda's breathing steadied slightly. Caleb exhaled. Only then did he look up. The hill sat silent again, like nothing had happened. But the truth was clear now. This wasn't over, not even close. Caleb lifted Koda carefully. The dog didn't fight, didn't resist, just rested against him. Trusting. Caleb stood, turned toward the house. Every step deliberate, every movement focused. Behind him, the hill remained, waiting. And now it had taken something from him. The house felt smaller that night. Not physically, but in the way everything narrowed down to one place, one sound, one breath at a time. Caleb laid Koda near the fireplace, close to the only steady heat left in the room. The lantern burned low beside them, casting a soft, uneven glow across the floor. Blood had soaked through the first layer of bandage, not heavy anymore, but enough. Caleb worked in silence. His hands didn't shake, not visibly. Years of training held them steady, cleaning, pressing, wrapping, checking. Every movement precise, practiced, automatic. Combat medic drills. Muscle memory. But this wasn't a battlefield, and Koda wasn't just another body to stabilize. Stay with me, Caleb murmured. Koda's eyes stayed locked on him. Not panicked, not confused, just present. The same way he'd always been. Caleb tightened the wrap slightly, then paused, watching for reaction. Koda flinched, barely, then settled, still trusting. Caleb exhaled slowly. Good, he said under his breath. Minutes passed, then more. The bleeding slowed further, breathing steadied, not safe, but stable. For now. Only then did Caleb sit back. The room stretched out around him again. The walls, the shadows, the silence. It all came back at once, and with it, the anger. Not loud, not explosive. Cold, focused. He stood slowly, walked to the table. The documents were still there. Spread out exactly where he'd left them. Untouched, but not safe. Not anymore. Caleb picked up the top folder, flipped it open. His eyes moved faster now. Not scanning, searching. Patterns, connections. He didn't need the whole story. Just enough. Names, dates, coordinates, repeated entries. Same regions, same time frames, different incidents, floods, fires, avalanches. Every time, something followed. Land transfers, ownership changes, quiet, legal, clean, too clean. Caleb's jaw tightened. This wasn't rescue. he said quietly. Not just rescue. He grabbed another document. A list. Typed, organized. Companies, contracts, investors. One name appeared more than once. Then again and again. Holloway, Grant Holloway. Caleb's eyes darkened slightly. He flipped to another page. More notes. Handwritten this time. Sharper. More urgent. Patterns confirmed. Land acquired post-disaster. Same group, same method. The handwriting shifted near the bottom. Less steady, but clearer. They're using the chaos. Caleb stared at the line for a long moment, then exhaled slowly. That's what this is, he muttered. Koda shifted behind him. A soft sound. Still alive. Still here. Caleb turned slightly, checking him. The dog's chest rose and fell. Slower now, but steady. Caleb nodded once, then turned back to the table. The final folder sat at the bottom of the stack. Thicker. Worn. He opened it carefully. Inside, photographs, documents, correspondence. Everything more detailed, more deliberate. The deeper he went, the clearer it became. Thomas Bennett hadn't just been running rescues. He'd been watching, recording, building a case. Quietly. Over years. Maybe decades. Caleb flipped another page. A map. Marked points across multiple states. All tied to the same events, the same aftermath, the same outcome. Land. Always land. Then a final sheet. Different from the rest. No official formatting. Just a statement. Typed, signed. Caleb read it slowly. If this is found, then someone finally made it past the surface. Everything below is proof, not theory, not suspicion, proof. Caleb's grip tightened slightly on the page. He kept reading. Names, full names, connected, layered, people with influence, people with reach, people who didn't lose when disasters hit. They gained. And at the center, Holloway, not just Grant, the family, the network. Caleb lowered the paper slowly. The room felt colder, not from the air, from understanding. They weren't hiding money, he said quietly. They were hiding this. Koda let out a soft breath behind him. Caleb looked back. The dog's eyes were half open, watching him. Still there, still fighting. Caleb walked over and crouched beside him. Rested a hand gently against his neck. You didn't just find a hole, he said. You found the reason. Koda's tail moved once. Weak. But there. Caleb swallowed, then looked back at the table, at the documents, at the truth sitting in front of him. The hill, the bunker, the attack, the offer. It all lined up now. Grant Holloway hadn't come for the land. He hadn't cared about the mansion or the planes or anything on the surface. He came for what was buried, for what Thomas Bennett had hidden, for what Caleb now held in his hands. The realization settled in fully. Heavy. Unavoidable. This wasn't a discovery anymore. It was a target. Caleb stood slowly, walked to the window. The hill sat in the darkness. Quiet. Still. But now he knew. It wasn't forgotten. It had been protected. For a long time. Until now. Behind him, Koda shifted again. Alive. Because he'd stepped in. Because he'd taken the hit. Caleb's jaw set. Yeah, he said quietly. They picked the wrong place. Morning came slow. Gray light slipped through broken windows, stretching across the floor, touching the edges of the documents still scattered across the table. Caleb hadn't slept. Not really. Just short drops into silence, then back up again. Every sound registered, every shift in the house, every breath from the dog beside the fire. Koda was still alive. That was enough. For now. Caleb checked the bandage again. Clean. No fresh bleeding. The dog's breathing had steadied overnight, still shallow, still careful, but consistent. Koda opened one eye when Caleb touched his shoulder. Didn't move. Didn't need to. Caleb nodded once. Good, he murmured. Outside, the valley looked the same. Snow untouched. Wind low. No tracks, no movement. Like nothing had happened. But Caleb knew better. They'd come once. They'd come again. Only next time, they wouldn't hesitate. He stood up slowly, walked back to the table. The files waited there, same as before. But now they felt heavier. Not physically. Responsibility. He gathered them carefully, stacked them. Sorted by type, maps, reports, statements. Then he paused. Looked at the last folder again, the one Bennett had marked. Final. Caleb slid it into a separate pack. Close. Not leaving it out again. Not making that mistake twice. Koda watched him from the floor. Not moving, but tracking every step. Still working. Even now. Caleb glanced over. You're not done yet, are you? Koda's tail tapped once. Slow. Enough. Caleb almost smiled. Then he moved. Packed the essentials. Flash drives. Camera, notebook, the files. Everything that mattered. He didn't take much else. Didn't need to. He stepped outside. Cold air hit him clean, sharp, grounded. The hill stood ahead, unchanged, still quiet, but no longer hidden. Caleb studied it for a long moment, then turned away. Not going back down there today, not yet. The truth didn't belong underground anymore. It never had. The drive into town took longer this time. Not because of the road. Because of the weight in the truck. Because of what sat beside him. Because of what it meant. Koda lay across the seat, head resting low, eyes half open. Still watching. Still aware. Caleb kept one hand on the wheel, the other resting lightly near the dog's neck. Not checking. Just there. The town came into view slowly. Same buildings, same streets, same people moving through morning routines. But something felt different, like the place was waiting. He parked outside a small office near the courthouse. Weathered sign, simple, legal services. Caleb stepped out, opened the passenger door. Koda didn't move. Stay, Caleb said quietly. The dog blinked once, understood. Inside, the office smelled like paper and old wood. A woman sat behind the desk. Mid-50s, sharp eyes, didn't smile right away. What can I help you with? Caleb didn't sit, didn't hesitate. I need this documented, he said. He set the pack on the desk, opened it, turned it toward her. Her expression shifted as she looked down. Pages. Maps. Names. Details. Real. Where did you get this? She asked. Caleb met her eyes. From the place they don't want anyone looking. She held his gaze a second longer, then nodded. All right, she said. Then we do this right. Hours passed. Statements, copies, records logged, names entered into systems that didn't forget, didn't disappear, didn't get buried. By afternoon, it was moving. Not fast, but real. Caleb stepped back outside. The sky had cleared. Sunlight hit the mountains hard now, bright, clean, impossible to ignore. He leaned against the truck for a moment. Breathing, just breathing. Koda shifted inside. Slow. Careful. Alive. Caleb opened the door again. The dog lifted his head, looked at him. Same eyes, same presence. You did it, Caleb said quietly. Koda didn't react. Didn't need to. The work wasn't finished. But it had started. And this time, it wasn't hidden. Weeks passed. Then months. Things changed. Quietly at first. Investigations opened. Names surfaced. Stories followed. People started asking questions. The kind that didn't go away. The property didn't sell, didn't get developed, didn't disappear. It stayed, protected. Not because of the land, because of what was under it, and what it meant. Caleb stayed too. The house changed slowly. Not rebuilt, not polished, just lived in. Repaired where it needed it, left alone where it didn't. Koda healed. Not fully. The limp stayed. A reminder. But he moved. Followed. Watched. Same as always. One afternoon, months later, a small group came through. Students, guided, curious, learning. Caleb sat on the porch, Koda beside him. The dog rested more now, but his eyes still tracked everything. A kid broke from the group, walked up slowly, looked at the house, then at Caleb, then at Koda. Is it true? The kid asked. Caleb didn't answer right away. The boy pointed toward the hill. Did you find it? Caleb looked down. Koda didn't move, just rested there. Quiet. Steady. Caleb's hand dropped to his head, scratched behind his ear. The dog's tail moved once, slow, familiar. Caleb looked back at the kid, then shook his head slightly. Wasn't me, he said. The boy frowned. Then who? Caleb didn't answer. Didn't need to. The kid followed his gaze. Down. To the dog. Koda blinked once, then closed his eyes again. The boy smiled, soft, like he understood. Out in the distance, the hill stood quiet. The plains sat untouched. The cars rusted in place. Nothing flashy, nothing loud, just a place that almost disappeared. And didn't. Because someone stayed. Because someone didn't walk away. Because one dog refused to stop. Caleb leaned back in the chair. Sunlight warm on his face. Wind light across the porch. Koda breathing steady beside him. For the first time, in a long time, nothing was pulling him backward. Nothing was waiting to break loose. Just this moment, this place, this quiet. And something he hadn't felt in years. Not peace, not exactly. But close enough. If you believe loyalty like that still exists, comment 1 below. If you've ever had someone, person or dog, stand by you when everything else fell apart, comment 0 and tell us where you're watching from. And if stories like this mean something to you, real stories about courage, loyalty, and people who refuse to walk away, make sure you subscribe and stay with us. Because the next story might hit even closer to home.